everybody, Adam Cleary, FourFourTwo here, and I'm sorry I'm late. Okay, I was at the Porto game, I was away, I just missed it, so we're a day behind with this one, but Newcastle beat PSG 4-1. Alright, so first, these were the teams, and from a Newcastle perspective, it is nothing that you weren't already expecting. I knew Mbappe was going to be there, so Jamal Lascelles came in, and other than that, it's the team that has just been playing. Now, I, like a number of Newcastle United fans, were slightly concerned about the absence of Mbappe because that defensive unit plays so much better when he is in it, for one major reason. Kieran Trippier, Fabian Schär, Jamal Lascelles, and Dan Burn possess a number of excellent qualities as defenders. They are strong, they are resolute, they are intelligent, they are experienced, they are just good defenders, but one thing they don't possess is pace. And the thing is, it's not like Sven Botman's absolutely lightning rapid either, but he is the player that allows that entire back four to push nice and far up the pitch because his recovery runs mean that if a team does get in behind, he's able to mop that up. Lascelles, great defender, I think he gets way too much stick. He's much better than people realise, but one thing he isn't is particularly quick. So, I mean, obviously, given that Newcastle were missing a bit of pace in their back line and they were about to play one of the best teams in the world for getting in behind you with pace, obviously, what they were going to do was play a low block. They were going to play really deep, right? Haha, no, said the fat controller. You are wrong. You can see here that Newcastle were perfectly comfortable leaving a lot of space in behind. Their press was really high. If anything, they only had a mid-block at best, which is when you congest the middle of the pitch rather than the back end of the pitch. So how on earth did that work? Alright, so this is how the teams both lined up. I put PSG in red just because it's really hard to differentiate between the white and the blue on this. So just bear with me. It was a 4-2-4 from PSG, which is pretty much quite disrespectful. There's probably a myriad of reasons why they did this, but the main one was that man for man in individual battles, PSG thought that they were better, miles better, than all of those Newcastle players. And also, presumably, they saw the absence of Sven Botman and assumed that Newcastle would sit a bit deeper, allowing them to have loads of territory here and basically just making it worth having four attackers. But the main problem with having these four attackers is you can already see in this area of the pitch that PSG are outnumbered. They're man for man here, but the 2 versus 3 here. And that meant that when they were able to break the press and move the ball into the middle, Newcastle actually had quite a lot of control. It was very difficult for the two midfielders to create any sort of chances to help them get in behind when they were getting marked and defended by these three players here. And what Newcastle did, which was incredibly clever and incredibly brave, was when any one of these players dropped off the front line to try and help out in the middle and help to create something, the defender just went with them. Like, they interchanged quite a lot, but how is this for an image? Kylian Mbappe dropping off to receive the ball and Jamal Lascelles saying, "Oh no you don't, I'm going to stick skin tight to you." And the reason this is so brave by Newcastle is you can already see here, if one of your players drops off that front line and your defender is determined to man mark them and go with them, you leave huge amounts of space for other players to get into. So it's down to the other players who are sticking in their position to recognise that and match any runs that go into that space. And Kieran Trippier, to his credit, was brilliant at that. But the really clever thing about Newcastle's approach was in these front 6 players here, because Newcastle like to press with their 3 and then sort of with 2 behind, and usually Bruno Guimaraes sort of floating around and only pressing up when needs be. But instead, for this game, they actually pressed a lot more like a flat unit of 5. Now, when you look at PSG and what would have been their build-up phase here, they have both the central midfielders dropping back to get involved, and then the back 4, and then the goalkeeper as well, giving you loads of different passing angles and opportunities. Now, what Newcastle normally like to do is treat the edge of the pitch like an extra defender. So they press quite narrowly initially to try and force the ball out to the fullbacks, and then that's when they trigger. So effectively penning players into these areas. But the slight problem with doing this against PSG is that these two players are Dembele and Mbappe. So if you're constantly forcing the ball wide, you're not always going to be able to stop the obvious pass, which is down into this channel here, effectively leaving them one-on-one with the fullback. You need to avoid that. So instead, Newcastle would press really wide, starting from the outside of the pitch, and then when it went into the 2 central defenders, who they perceived to be the weaker on the ball, that would then trigger the rest of the press. And you saw this perfectly in the first goal, even though it does kind of come off a bit of a mistake from PSG. Newcastle aren't even set to properly press. The ball should go into the middle, but instead, for whatever reason, they play it back to the defence, and Newcastle are then on them in this shape. They've stopped the ball going up the field, down the flank. Instead, they've forced them back and into the centre. Then all of a sudden, they've got more players around them than PSG can deal with. They try to play a really risky pass out of defence. It's intercepted, comes to Isaac, and Almiron buries the rebound. Like, you'll know from watching Newcastle United over the last 12 months, when was the last time you saw Bruno pressing that high up the pitch to try and win the ball back? He is normally the 6. He is a line deeper than everybody else. He's supposed to be mopping it up when they get through. But here he is as far advanced as Longstaff, as Gordon, as Tonali. He is one of a flat 5. Now the thing is, that's really clever, isn't it? That's Eddie Howe and his coaching team sitting down with the players and with each other and working out how they can adapt Newcastle's existing system to best suit playing against PSG. And it's worked really, really well. So on the one hand, you want to look at that victory as a really good tactical triumph for Eddie Howe. But there's something way more important than any of that. I know this is a weird thing to keep saying for a YouTube channel that is effectively just talking about tactics all the time. But tactics only get you so far. They give you the best possible chance of winning a game of football. They don't automatically win you a game of football. So Eddie Howe got it spot on here. He gave Newcastle the best possible chance of beating PSG, but given how good they are, that guaranteed them nothing. What got them this win, and what got them such an emphatic win at that, was just their, like, I want to say like philosophy or their ethos or their approach or just something like that, but it's not that. It's just them. In his relatively short time at the club, Eddie Howe has built this team into a group of players, into a unit who buy into a particular way of playing. It's written all over the training ground. Intensity is our identity. They train as they play. They give absolutely everything. And it sounds really cheesy and cliched, and if you're a fan of another club, I understand why you'd roll your eyes at it. But the Newcastle players come out so many times after they've won big home games and say, we fed off the crowd. Like, we used their energy to give us an extra 5, 10, 15%, and that's what made the difference. And what will be so pleasing to Eddie Howe, and should be so pleasing to Newcastle fans en masse, is that there is an example of this intensity in all 4 of the goals. For the first one, they want to press as a unit. They want to shut down that space and win the ball back. For the second, Dan Burn wants to win that header way more than the defender does. Sean Longstaff wants to make that run into the box to try and create a chance. And even at 3-1 up with virtually no time left, Fabian Schär still wants to follow players in the middle of the pitch to try and win the ball back if they take a bad touch. And from there, he's just got the drive and the self-belief to think, do you know what? I'm just going to score the best goal you've ever seen here. And I get why that sounds stupid. Like, surely every club wants to feed off their home crowd, and every club wants to try and outwork the opposition and run really hard. But it's just, this isn't part of how Newcastle play. It's not an element of their approach. It is their approach. It is the way they play. And there's another really cheesy saying that Eddie Howe apparently likes, and it's hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And yeah, it's incredibly lame, but can you think of a better description of Newcastle United 4, PSG 1 in the world? Now, this entire team is littered with players whose stories should never have ended up in this game of football. Like, Miguel Almiron and Sean Longstaff were both in the starting 11 for the 2-1 defeat to Wolves, the now infamous lowest point of being a Newcastle fan right before the takeover came in, when they were heading for a dead cert relegation, another uninspiring defeat. They couldn't string 2 passes together. They were barely scoring goals. They were in that starting 11 and they both scored against PSG in the Champions League. Fabian Schär and Jacob Murphy, who combined for the 4th goal, were both on the bench that day. Like, Schär couldn't get in the team ahead of Kieran Clark, and Murphy was having loan after loan to championship sides and not really impressing anyone in the process. Jamal Lascelles was Newcastle United's captain in the championship. He had the armband on when they couldn't beat Reading and Sheffield Wednesday and Ipswich, and no disrespect to any of those clubs, but players with that kind of thing on their CV don't then captain teams in the Champions League and put in a borderline man of the match performance marking Kylian Mbappe. It just doesn't happen. The best one though by a mile, and if you're a Newcastle fan, you will remember this, is from that first transfer window after Eddie Howe came in. Remember all the meme accounts? Remember the big joke they had? It was like, oh, Geordies thought they were going to buy Mbappe, and instead they've gone and got Dan Burn. That one's aged like milk, hasn't it? And that's really what Eddie Howe's done at Newcastle, is he's taken so many players who allegedly aren't anywhere near this level. And if we're being completely truthful, purely in terms of talent, aren't anywhere near this level, and he has worked with them and he has coached them and he has said, look, if we apply ourselves and we play the right way as a team and we bring a level of intensity that these other teams won't bring, that will make up for this alleged gap in talent. They won't be able to live with what you're doing. Like, this is the best example of all of this, by the way. Think about the level Dembele is allegedly supposed to be at and the level Lascelles is allegedly supposed to be at. Dembele is faster than he is. He's got more experience in the Champions League than Lascelles does. And yet from here, Lascelles is able to recover this situation and put a tackle in. How? Because Lascelles is more determined to stop that being a goal than Dembele is to actually score it. So the genius of what Eddie Howe's done is not in how Newcastle set up. It's not in their formation. It's not in how they press. It's that he's managed to unite an entire group of players of varying levels of ability behind this idea that they can go on and achieve things if they work together, and then unite that with the entire fan base. And what that then gives you is a group of really talented footballers who've all bought in, they're all singing from the same hymn sheet, they're all working really hard for each other, and a full stadium behind them that will push them on to those extra, just tiny little margins, give them that extra 5 or 10%. And if you're just a little bit skeptical about whether or not a crowd can actually have that sort of impact on a group of professional footballers, just keep in mind that this is Newcastle United, one of, if not the biggest night in the club's history. It's a landmark win. It's one of their greatest ever performances, and it happened on a night where every single person who was there says it is the greatest crowd, the greatest atmosphere they have ever been a part of. So, Newcastle United 4, PSG 1, or at least what I made of it, watching the full 90-minute replay back from a hotel bed in Porto, thinking I may have made the biggest mistake of my entire life. That's fun, isn't it? So let us know what you made of it all in the comments below, and please do subscribe to FourFourTwo while you're here. Subscribing really does help us out. It's the one thing that gives us our extra little 5 or 10%. And as I say, we've got really cool, big, exciting, sexy things coming in the very near future, so you don't want to miss those, do you? In the meantime, grab me on Twitter at Adam Cleary, CLERY, FourFourTwo, the entire social spectrum of which is available in the top right-hand corner of the video. Rewind it if you didn't see it the first time. But until next time, I've been Adam Cleary, and I actually did it. 4-1. I'll see you soon. Bye.